So now I'd like to introduce Laurie Masciandaro, who co-chaired this year's Awards of Merit Committee along with Laura Smith, to announce the organizations and individuals recognized with the CLHO Award of Merit this year.
Thank you, Beth. I know I speak on behalf of the entire committee when I say that reviewing the applications and seeing all the good work that the history community is accomplishing is a highlight of our CLHO year. Laura Smith, the co-chair of the awards committee, and I would like to thank the members of the committee who carefully and thoughtfully considered each submission. Today's ceremony can't begin to explore or even give a good overview of your work, nor can we mention all the people who have contributed to those efforts. What we can do is thank and congratulate you. And I know you'll all understand what I mean when I say that at some point, we've got to stop meeting like this. And you'll understand when I say that I do hope this is our last exclusively Zoom awards ceremony. I'd like to acknowledge Connecticut Humanities and the tireless work they do on behalf of history and culture in our state. 8 of the projects we're recognizing today received assistance from Connecticut Humanities, and that assistance was never more necessary. On behalf of the Connecticut League of History Organizations and the history community at large, thank you, Connecticut Humanities. If there's an underlying theme in this year's awards, it's how nimble the history community is in Connecticut, able to adapt to an event that fundamentally changed how we present ourselves, how we welcome the public, and how we tell our stories. That resilience is a wonderful trait, and everyone can be proud of our history community's response to the global pandemic. And now, let's turn to the awards. Our first award goes to the Warren Historical Society for an interactive map of Old Warren Center Cemetery. The old burying ground in Warren provides a unique document of the town's history from 1755 to the present. Using the talents of a young volunteer, the cemetery was photographed and mapped using a drone. Other volunteers from the Historical Society photographed grave markers and matched them with the map, identifying them using work done by the Works Progress Administration in the 1930s and records compiled by local historians in 1916. In partnership with the Housatonic Valley Association, the map and data were put online, and the Old Warren Center Cemetery is now searchable by either name or by grave location. This project, realized when other projects had to be canceled, was at once achievable within the restrictions of the pandemic, offered meaningful and important work for the Society's volunteers, and provided a valuable tool online that will be used for generations. This collaboration of the Warren Historical Society volunteers, the Housatonic Valley Association, and young history enthusiasts provides a model for small historical societies to embrace and preserve their history and make their resources available to everyone. Congratulations, Warren Historical Society. Next, we would like to acknowledge the East Haddam Historical Society and Museum for their project, Saving Land, Saving History, made possible in part by a grant from Connecticut Humanities. The East Haddam Historical Society, in conjunction with the East Haddam Land Trust, produced a series of 4 documentaries focusing on 3 land trust preserves that contain remains of the mills which played such an important role in East Haddam's past. The films, posted on YouTube, explain the impact of human development on each site and tell the story of the mill ruins. They capture the natural beauty of each site, along with the crumbling stone dams, sluiceways, mill foundations, rusted turbines, and waterworks. The films also incorporate photos and documents from the Historical Society's collection and filmed interviews made especially for the project. It encouraged hiking the preserves, providing a much needed outdoor recreational option, which lent itself to social distancing. This collaboration between two nonprofit organizations, the Historical Society and the Land Trust, is an example of how limited resources can be maximized by organizations who can find a common vision and purpose. And the Society's COVID pivot to social media, including a new Instagram account, brought an audience so much greater than originally anticipated, and that audience is still growing. East Haddam experienced what so many of the organizations we'll celebrate today did. Using new tools and refining the use of familiar ones increased the reach of their project beyond what was originally imagined. And moving online means the work is extended and saved in perpetuity for continued future use. Congratulations, East Haddam Historical Society. Next, we'd like to acknowledge another recipient of a Connecticut Humanities Grant, the Connecticut Democracy Center at Connecticut's Old State House for Connecticut's History Day's virtual state contest. I hope you're all familiar with Connecticut History Day. It's a gargantuan undertaking, allowing thousands of students from all areas of the state to research, interpret, and analyze historical subjects, and create presentations on those subjects in a variety of media. Halfway through the 2020 regional contest, COVID struck, making the in-person state judging event impossible. Not wanting to take away the opportunity, not willing to cancel, instead, the Connecticut Democracy Center reimagined the event and quickly pivoted to an online event for the state judging. 448 regional winners were allowed to share their work. The competition was completed, maintaining a sense of normality, which was especially important in 2020, when students were cut off from friends and so many academic activities. Always optimists, the organizers found a silver lining. Parents and competitors got to see more student projects. Allow me a personal observation. I've been a judge at History Day competitions many times, and I've been a proud mother. I know how important History Day is to the kids who participate, and I know what a mammoth task it is. We commend Connecticut History Day for pivoting on a dime and conducting the 2020 state competition. Indulge me for another moment. Can we go to the next slide, please, Megan? Thank you. We at the CLHO would like to give a special shout out to Lila Gillen and William Zhang, winners of the League's Special Award. Thank you, Connecticut Democracy Center. And in case it slipped your attention, after all, there was a lot going on this year, plenty of Connecticut institutions were there to remind you that we celebrated an important anniversary this past year. One of those societies was the Connecticut Historical Society, who reminded us with "The Work Must Be Done, Women of Color and the Right to Vote," that not all women were included with the passage of the 19th Amendment 100 years ago. The Connecticut Historical Society, with the help of a Connecticut Humanities Grant, recognized the importance of expanding the public's understanding of the suffrage fight to include women of color. Internalized racism in many national and Connecticut women's suffrage associations, and a desire of women of color to view the problem in a larger context, led those women to establish their own organizations and to ally with other organizations more sympathetic to their cause. The activism of women like Mary Townsend Seymour and the 24 other activists identified through the Society's research reached beyond suffrage to overlapping problems of race. Their biographies, as assembled by the Connecticut Historical Society, are posted online. Like most of the programs we're recognizing today, this program was affected by the COVID pandemic. The Society, in partnership with several other history museums, adapted planned in-person events to virtual presentations and reached people from at least 41 different towns in all corners of the state. Thank you, Connecticut Historical Society, for providing a truer picture of the fight for women's suffrage in Connecticut. Digging into History, World War I Trench Restoration in Seicheprey, France, was organized by the Connecticut State Library under the leadership of Christine Pitsley. 15 Connecticut high school students traveled to the small French village of Seicheprey, the site of the first clash between German and American troops in World War I. These students lived and worked side by side with 15 French students, restoring a section of the trenches once occupied by Connecticut soldiers. As preparation for the trip, each student was required to research a soldier from their town who fought at Seicheprey. Students worked with local history societies, libraries, and veterans organizations. Digging into History provided a hands-on approach to history through archaeology. A few significant finds helped students gain an understanding of the reality of what had taken place. They came home with an appreciation of how history impacts and intersects their lives. When they returned, students spoke at their schools about the experience. They spoke at libraries, at historical societies, were interviewed in local newspapers and on the radio, participated in conferences, and took part in a Veterans Day event held at the State Armory. In addition to the students' experience, this project reestablished the bond between Seicheprey and Connecticut. And it is most fitting that we are giving this award today on the 20th of April. 103 years ago to the day that the battle raged in the very trenches the students restored. Thank you, Connecticut State Library. Next, we would like to recognize the Salmon Brook Historical Society for its Stroll Through Granby History. The Stroll Through Granby History is a self-guided walking tour of 44 historic homes along Granby's Main Street. The stroll provided an opportunity for the community to explore its history with an outside activity conducive to social distancing. Each property included on the tour had a sign with a QR code, which participants could access on their phones. The QR code, the first use of that technology for the society, linked to its website where information on chosen structures was stored. Walkers could customize their experience depending on their level of interest, beginning with basic historical information. Those with more interest could have a bit more. And for those whose curiosity was still not satisfied, there was even more information provided. Because of this project, use of the Salmon Brook Historical Society's website increased almost 10 times. And their Facebook engagement increased a whopping 40 times, introducing the Historical Society and Granby history to hundreds more people. Not unimportantly, the Salmon Brook Historical Society's Stroll Through Granby History celebrated the 75th anniversary of the society, and it serves as a model of low-cost, high-impact programming for other societies. Thank you, Salmon Brook Historical Society. The Winton Historical Society, Citizens at Last, Hannah Ambler, Grace Schenk, and The Vote. The Wilton Historical Society planned a physical exhibition and other events to commemorate the passage of the 19th Amendment. The society intended to highlight 2 Wilton women, Grace Schenk and Hannah Ambler, as part of their History is Here initiative. But, like so many other institutions, Wilton adapted from an in-person exhibition to a digital format hosted on the Society's website. In addition to its focus on Ambler and Schenk, the project tied the local movement to the national one, addressing the significance of women's dress, grassroots activism, some women's opposition to the 19th Amendment, and internal racism, exposing the duplicity of some of the movement's leaders, including many Connecticut women, demonstrating how the rights of women of color were sacrificed in pursuit of white women's gains, and reminding us that as far as we have come, there is always further to go. Thank you and congratulations, Wilton Historical Society. The New Haven Museum, with their exhibition Factory, documented the post-industrial underground history of the former New Haven Clock Company, a massive building located in the Worcester Square neighborhood. For decades, after the factory closed in 1960, the building housed a variety of visual and performance artists, punk bands, skateboarders, and a succession of music and adult entertainment clubs. Former occupants, artists, and employees of the various nightclubs were interviewed and provided information, photographs, and ephemera from their personal collections. One commentator called it a rich, surprising, funny, sad, beautiful retelling of the story of a building. Telling that story, I think it's fair to say, proved more than the usual challenge. New Haven Museum had one of the more complicated COVID maneuvers. Factory opened on February 20 to a full house of 325 people. 3 weeks later, COVID closed the museum. But during the fall, the museum reopened by reservation only. 2 months later, it closed again as cases in Connecticut spiked. Not to be defeated, Factory went online with Factory Weekly, a 10-week series of short videos highlighting sections of the exhibit with new footage and photos. Thank you, New Haven Museum, for capturing a part of Connecticut history that is often overlooked and underrepresented in the state, and for persevering with your efforts to present that history to the public. Westport's suffragists, our neighbors, our crusaders. The 19th Amendment turns 100. A Connecticut Humanities Grant recipient, was Westport Library's first history exhibition. It illustrated how Westport women stepped up, and in doing so, stepped out onto the streets to fully engage in the Votes for Women campaign. In addition to the story of Westport's contribution, the exhibition was designed to engage visitors on a variety of timely topics, including citizens' rights and responsibilities, equality, and social justice. The exhibition also posed key questions. How does the past connect to today? How have Connecticut residents influenced U.S. history? How do people make a difference? Indeed, what does it mean to make a difference? The well-attended exhibition opened March 6. Less than a week later, the library was closed. Disappointed but undeterred, much like the women they showcased, the library kept the exhibit available to the public by transferring all content online. Planned lectures were shifted to published articles or online programs, which included lively question and answer periods. Congratulations, Westport Library, on such an auspicious history exhibition debut. Next, we recognize the First Congregational Church of Woodbury, Connecticut, for their publication, 350 Years of Faith, Fellowship, and Service. First Church was the founding body of the town of Woodbury. To commemorate the 350-year life of the church, a comprehensive history was written and published. The book provides a unique perspective on the church's position in the community, its response to local, regional, and national events and values, and to significant trends in society. It also serves, as one reviewer noted, as a requiem for a venerable gathering place that was the beating heart of a community for 3.5 centuries. The small congregation voted to suspend services in May of last year, the 350th anniversary of First Church's founding. This publication, based on a trove of unused and unknown records, preserves the history of the First Church, which would have otherwise remained unknown. 350 Years of Faith may also serve as a valuable primary source for future historians, reflecting members' thoughts at the end of First Church of Woodbury's service. Thank you, First Church, for what must have been a bittersweet undertaking, documenting an important part of Woodbury's history. Congratulations to the Weston Historical Society for the development and installation of 5 outdoor interpretive signs at the Weston Historical Society's Coley Homestead, allowing visitors to more fully enjoy the site when the buildings are closed. These signs tell the history of Coley Homestead and its buildings, the 1840 house and carriage house, the barn complex, the outbuildings, and one of the few remaining bunkhouses in Connecticut. Putting to use knowledge gained in the STEPS program, the all-volunteer Weston Historical Society made their site more user-friendly and enriched the visitor's experience by providing wayfinding and interpretive signs. The signs on the 3.5-acre property include historic photographs from the Society's collection and provide a self-guided tour. With the addition of the signs, made possible in part by a grant from Connecticut Humanities, the Weston Historical Society offered the community a bucolic setting where people could walk, exercise, and picnic in the socially distanced outdoors while learning more about the history of their town. Congratulations, Weston Historical Society. The League recognizes another Connecticut Humanities Grant recipient, the Greenwich Historical Society, for An Unfinished Revolution, the Women's Suffrage Centennial. An Unfinished Revolution told personal stories of Greenwich women and men who agitated for women's rights, while at the same time broadening the story to examine the social, racial, and historical context of the suffrage debate in the United States. As the title suggests, this exhibition emphasized the unfinished nature of the story of equal rights in Connecticut and the United States, drawing connections between the experience of 19th century activists and the continued fight for equal rights for all Americans today. It also explored the racial and class biases present in the suffragist movement. These connections were strongly communicated via a photographic timeline, an illustrated slideshow of significant individuals, and an interactive game testing visitors' knowledge of voting rights and the progress of women in American politics and society. In response to the necessary closure of the exhibition, the Greenwich Historical Society provided a complete digital realization of the exhibition online and produced a series of videos exploring themes and objects from the exhibition. An Unfinished Revolution offers a thorough treatment of the struggle for women's suffrage in the context of the wider movement of gender equality. Congratulations and thank you, Greenwich Historical Society. Our next award recognizes the contributions of Charles Lyle, the former executive director of the Webb Dean Stevens Museum. And I know it will take a while for some of us to think of Charles as the former director. Under his 13.5-year tenure, he directed the restoration of its 3 18th century houses and converted the Webb Dean Stevens Museum into a destination for visitors from near and far through innovative programming and community collaboration, including establishment of an advisory committee to bring more diverse community voices into the management of the museum. Mr. Lyle transformed the organization into a thriving, welcoming, and innovative center of historical learning, established new exhibits and programs, and devoted over a decade to developing the plans and assisting with the fundraising for the new Education and Visitor Center. He leaves the museum at the top of its game in public engagement, financial health, and preservation. Director Lyle's long career in the museum field spans over 50 years and 6 directorships. Thank you, Charles Lyle, for your work in service of Connecticut state history. Next, we turn to the Hartford History Center for October 1920, celebrating the centennial of women's suffrage. I know what you're thinking. What's so special about October 1920? Well, at that time in Hartford, voter registration took place only every other year and only in the months of March and October. In October of 1920, thousands of newly eligible voters, Hartford women, single, married and widowed, Black and white, Jewish and Christian, native-born and immigrants, housewives, stenographers, artists, teachers, store clerks, and an undertaker lined up at City Hall to register to vote for the first time. The focus of Hartford History Center's project was their collection of city voter registration cards. Using those cards, Hartford newspapers, city directories, the Suffrage News Bulletin, and the US Census, the Hartford History Center was able to piece together and gather women's stories and uncover the racial and cultural diversity among the over 15,000 of Hartford women who registered. Newspaper articles, advertisements, and demographic information provide context and insight into the registrants' activities and roles in society, as well as the value they placed on voting. Initially conceived as a physical exhibition, in response to the coronavirus restrictions, staff designed the exhibit for online access. Finally, using the coronavirus for all the silver lining they could find, the center made sure everyone who used the library's curbside pickup service received a bookmark highlighting the online exhibition. We applaud the unique focus on the mechanics of becoming a voter. The Hartford History Center's original research adds a new perspective to our understanding of women of color and immigrant women in Connecticut in the early 20th century, and how highly most women valued claiming and exercising their electoral voices. The Essex Historical Society, Follow the Falls, Centerbrook. Follow the Falls Centerbrook examined the importance of the Falls River in Essex's most overlooked village, Centerbrook. This program, in collaboration with the Essex Land Trust, was originally conceived to include a publication, in-person programming, and special events. That began in January with a lecture series, but before other scheduled events could take place, and please forgive me for repeating a familiar refrain, COVID shut down public gatherings. The Society decided to focus its resources on enhancing two elements of the project which could be shared online. One, a digital magazine, highlighting 4 concentrated areas: geography, industry and commerce, transportation, and social history, beginning with Native American presence to the present day. The other online element was a unique virtual tour in the form of a flyover. Can we go to the next slide, Megan? Thank you. Using augmented reality and special mapping software, the Historical Society, working with donated talents and resources of an Essex architectural firm, developed a 3-minute video of what the village of Centerbrook looked like in 1910, accompanied by period photos, postcards, and street maps from the Society's collection. The result was the development of print and state-of-the-art digital productions that strengthens local history, benefits the Essex community, and serves as a model for cooperative efforts between residents, local businesses, like-minded nonprofits, and historical societies. Congratulations and thank you, Essex Historical Society. Next, the League would like to recognize another recipient of a Connecticut Humanities Grant, the Keeler Tavern Museum and History Center, for their project, Sisters. Sisters is built around a fictional play of the same name, based on the lives of 2 real women, one white and one black, Anna Marie Resigi and Phyllis Dubois, who lived and ran the Resigi Hotel, which we now know as the Keeler Tavern, before, during, and after the Civil War. The play confronts issues of ownership and the economics of being a white woman and being a free woman of color under a system of slavery. Sisters represents a concerted effort by the Keeler Tavern and History Center to provide a program that explores race relations and white privilege generally, and specifically in the community of Ridgefield. Performances were repositioned to comply with pandemic necessities. One performance was given to a small, socially distanced audience and was live streamed and recorded for future viewing. The program also included a live virtual talkback with the playwrights, cast, and production team as the inaugural element of the Keeler Tavern's virtual series called Let's Talk Hard History. In addition to the public program, Sisters also included a program for schools, which included watching a recording of the play, classroom extension activities, and live virtual interactions with museum educators. Sisters complicates our understanding of Connecticut history, forces us to confront the notion that Connecticut had enslaved residents well into the 1800s, and shows how events in Ridgefield were part of the larger debates about enslavement and race in antebellum America. As one teacher wrote, perhaps most importantly, the play allows my students to think about how those topics apply today. The League commends the Keeler Tavern for its exploration of hard history through Sisters. Congratulations to the Sharon Historical Society and Museum. Wild and Beautiful Creatures, the Life and Work of J.J. Audubon. This multifaceted project, conceived by the Sharon Historical Society and Museum, was a collaborative effort with the Tremaine Gallery at the Hotchkiss School, the Sharon Audubon Center, and the Sharon Historical Society, showcasing the artwork, life, and legacy of the 19th century artist and ornithologist John J. Audubon. The Tremaine Gallery showed nearly 30 of Audubon's hand-colored prints, including an original copper plate used in the creation of one of those prints. The Sharon Audubon Center held a variety of lectures, field walks, workshops, tours, and children's activities, while the Sharon Historical Society exhibition explored Audubon's career, working methods, and heritage. Together, the exhibition gives a sense of Audubon the scientist, artist, person, and muse. The multi-sited exhibition, the diverse programming that brought together history, natural history, and visual art, the way the national trends were connected to local institutions and efforts, make Wild and Beautiful worthy of our recognition. And, not insignificantly, the Sharon Historical Society was the only applicant with the foresight, some might call it luck, to end their exhibition before COVID struck. Congratulations, Sharon Historical Society and Museum, on a beautiful and enlightening exhibition. We now turn to another recipient of a Connecticut Humanities Grant and the only project to deal head-on with COVID-19. Turning the Tide, Madison and COVID-19 by the Madison Historical Society. Turning the Tide is the Madison Historical Society's first venture in filmmaking. Filmed between early April and late May when the state was in lockdown, the 30-minute documentary captures the raw emotions of the time. Like other communities across the nation, Madison saw the closure of businesses and schools, shortages in grocery stores, restrictions on daily life, and the illness and death of loved ones. The film features how members of the community responded to the pandemic, how officials and emergency responders prepared, how students and teachers switched to distance learning, how parents navigated working from home while helping their children switch to distance learning, and how the crisis affected frontline workers like medical professionals and grocery clerks. Most films like this are made retrospectively. Filming while events unfold allowed the Madison Historical Society to capture thoughts and feelings of people as they were experiencing the event. Turning the Tide is an important primary source for future generations and is now a part of the Historical Society's collection. Thank you, Madison Historical Society, for your important contribution. Our last award of merit for 2021 goes to Myron Stackew in recognition of his 45 years of dedication and lifelong advocacy in Connecticut and beyond, in the fields of social history, historical preservation, archaeology, architectural history, and economic and industrial history. Myron is known and respected as an archaeologist and architectural historian with the expertise to read a building based on physical evidence and an ability to use that reading to place buildings in a cultural, economic, and temporal context. His archaeological study of a house often stimulates a fresh look at the history of that house or building. He has been a visiting professor, adjunct, and guest lecturer internationally and in this country at many universities in New England and beyond, and is the author of many scholarly publications and lectures. Myron has served as a principal or team member for numerous organizations, including the Governor Jonathan Trumbull Senior House, Stanton Davis Homestead, the Mark Twain House, Harriet Beecher Stowe Center, Governor Samuel Huntington Trust, Mashantucket Pequot Museum and Research Center, the Huntington Homestead, the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation, and the Smithsonian Institution. He's also active in Connecticut history and preservation organizations, including the Connecticut Humanities Council, the Connecticut Trust for Historic Preservation, and Preservation Connecticut. And that is a very much shortened list of Myron's accomplishments and service. To a list of awards and acknowledgements that include the Fulbright Fellowship Program, a Winter Tour Fellowship, the Paul Buchanan Award, the Abbott Lowell Cummings Award, the American Association of State and Local Histories Award of Merit, we of the Connecticut League are honored and humbled to add the Connecticut League of History's Award of Merit. Myron Stacue, thank you for your service. And thank you to all the recipients of this year's Award of Merit. Your hard and inspired work, your flexibility, and your dedication and determination to bring your stories to the public make Connecticut a better place. And for that, we are all grateful.